If you had just listened to her once, just once, maybe she'd still be here, the old woman's voice cracked as she stared into the camera. The screen blurred for a moment, not because of poor quality, but because the cameraman's hands were trembling. Somewhere behind him, the billionaire stood frozen, his face pale, his eyes wet but empty, the way a man looks when he's staring at a past he can never undo. This was not the man people knew from the news, the smiling business tycoon who bought companies like candy, who traveled in jets and lived in palaces of glass. This was a father, broken. The story you're about to hear isn't about money. It's about the one thing money can't buy back, time. And when you reach the end, you'll understand why his daughter's only wish went unanswered, until it was far, far too late. It began in the penthouse of the Celestia Tower, a place where the walls were tall enough to hide the stars and the windows opened to a skyline that glittered like a jewelry box. Jonathan Steele sat at the head of a long mahogany dining table, his phone pressed between his ear and shoulder as he scrolled through numbers on his tablet. He didn't notice the untouched plate of breakfast in front of him, or the little girl in the pink pajamas swinging her legs on the far end of the table. "Dad," she said softly, her voice a hopeful whisper. He raised a finger, his universal sign for 1 minute. She waited. She always waited. Her name was Lila, 8 years old, with hair like spun gold and eyes that could make even the most jaded man believe in innocence again. But Jonathan had trained himself to see deals, not details. He was closing on a merger worth billions, and in his world, billions came first. That morning, Lila had worked up the courage to ask something she'd been dreaming about for weeks. "Daddy, can we go to the beach this Sunday?" Her words were careful, rehearsed, as if she was presenting a proposal in one of his boardrooms. Jonathan glanced up just long enough to offer a distracted smile. "We'll see, pumpkin. Daddy's got a busy week." She nodded, masking the disappointment, and poked at her cereal. He didn't notice the way her shoulders slumped. He didn't notice the way she whispered okay to herself. In Jonathan's mind, there would always be another Sunday. Another chance. What he didn't know was that Lila's life had already begun counting down in ways no one could see. The signs were subtle at first, too subtle for a man buried in meetings, flights, and calls. A little fatigue here, a complaint about headaches there. The family doctor mentioned it might be stress or maybe anemia. Kids grow fast, sometimes they just need rest, Jonathan was told. He took that as a green light to keep running at his usual speed, thinking everything could wait until, after the deal closes. But children don't wait. Time doesn't wait. One Thursday evening, while Jonathan was in Singapore negotiating with investors, Lila called him on video. She was wearing a paper crown she'd made at school. "Daddy, guess what? We're doing a father-daughter dance next month. Can you come?" Her face glowed on the tiny screen. Jonathan, standing in a hotel lobby with his briefcase, checked his schedule on his phone. "That's the same week I'm in Dubai, sweetheart. But maybe mommy can record it for me." He said it lightly, as if he hadn't just stepped on something fragile. Lila's smile wavered, but she nodded. "Okay, maybe next time." Jonathan ended the call feeling a twinge of guilt, but it dissolved quickly under the weight of an incoming business alert. Lila started keeping a little journal, not of her thoughts, but of her wishes. Small things. Making pancakes with Daddy, going to the park, reading bedtime stories together. And at the very bottom of the list, written in wobbly handwriting, was the biggest one: go to the beach with Daddy. She didn't tell anyone about the list, not even her mother. It was her secret hope, her quiet mission. As weeks passed, Lila's health declined faster. She began missing school, and her once bright energy dimmed. Her mother, Emily, grew more concerned and pressed Jonathan to come home more often. "It's probably nothing serious, but she needs you. She asks for you every night." Jonathan promised he'd try, but trying in his world often meant thinking about it for a few seconds before moving on. He convinced himself that providing the best doctors and the most comfortable home was the same as being there. After all, wasn't he working for her future? Then came the night everything shifted. It was raining hard, and the city lights blurred against the penthouse windows. Lila sat curled on the couch, her paper crown now bent at the edges. She looked up at her mother and whispered, "Mommy, if I only get one wish, can you make Daddy take me to the beach?" Emily's chest tightened. "Why do you say if you only get one wish, sweetheart?" Lila shrugged. "Because, sometimes I feel like I won't have many." Emily's eyes stung. She tried to laugh it off, to promise her that there'd be plenty of wishes, plenty of Sundays. But deep down, fear began to bloom. She called Jonathan that night, her voice sharper than usual. "John, this isn't just about work anymore. Something's wrong with Lila, and she needs you here." Jonathan, sitting in a boardroom in Tokyo, rubbed his temple. "Emily, I can't just walk away from a $1 billion deal. We'll set up something special for when I'm back, okay?" Emily didn't answer right away. When she did, her words cut deeper than any market loss he'd ever suffered. "There might not be a, when you're back." Jonathan brushed it off as emotional exaggeration. After all, children get sick all the time. They recover. They bounce back. That's what they do. But by the time his flight finally brought him home, the doctors had found something, a rare, aggressive illness that was already in its advanced stages. The kind that doesn't care how much money you have. For the first time in years, Jonathan canceled everything. Meetings were postponed, deals were handed off, his phone was turned off more than it was on. He sat by Lila's bedside, holding her hand, telling her stories about the ocean and how, when she got better, they'd build the biggest sandcastle anyone had ever seen. Lila smiled, but her eyes had a sadness in them that no child should ever carry. Then, one quiet morning, Lila woke up and asked, "Daddy, can we go to the beach today?" Jonathan hesitated. She was fragile, the weather was unpredictable, and the doctors would never approve. But something in her voice made him say, "Yes. Yes, we can." He promised they'd go the next morning when the sun was brighter. Lila closed her eyes, a small smile on her lips, and whispered, "Okay, Daddy." The morning was warm, the kind that carried a soft promise in the air, as if the day itself wanted to be kind to the world. But in the steel penthouse, kindness had already arrived too late. Jonathan awoke to an unusual silence. The house was always quiet, but this was different, a heavy, suffocating quiet, the kind you can feel pressing against your chest. He walked to Lila's room, smiling faintly as he imagined her face lighting up when he told her they were going to the beach right away. He opened the door, ready to surprise her. She lay there still, her paper crown resting beside her pillow, her tiny hand curled under her cheek. For a brief second, he thought she was sleeping. But when he reached to brush the hair from her face, the truth hit him like a freight train, cold, absolute, and irreversible. Lila was gone. The clock on the wall ticked on, cruelly unaware that it had just marked the end of a world. Jonathan stumbled back, his breath collapsing in his lungs, his mind screaming that this could not be real. Emily was already there, sitting on the floor against the wall, her face buried in her knees, her body shaking. She had been there for hours, keeping watch through the night, hoping against hope for a miracle that never came. Jonathan fell to his knees beside the bed, clutching his daughter's tiny hand, whispering, I'm here now, as if somehow his presence could rewind the hours. But the truth was brutal, he was there now, but not when it mattered. He had missed the only wish she ever truly asked of him. The doctors said she had slipped away peacefully, that she hadn't suffered in those final moments. But for Jonathan, the peace was an insult. There was nothing peaceful about the void she left behind. He thought of every meeting, every flight, every deal that had kept him away. He thought of the countless, "we'll see," and "maybe next time," answers he had given her. They weren't harmless brush-offs anymore. They were knives. That day, Jonathan canceled everything permanently. The billionaire who once ran empires simply vanished from the business world. But money has a way of clinging to men like him. He still had it all. The problem was, none of it mattered anymore. The penthouse felt like a glass coffin, each room echoing with ghosts of moments that never happened. In the weeks after her funeral, Jonathan became obsessed with the journal Emily found in Lila's desk drawer, the one filled with her wishes. He read it over and over, his eyes always lingering on the last line, "Go to the beach with Daddy." That sentence became his tormentor and his prayer. He would wake in the middle of the night hearing her voice asking it. He began visiting the beach alone, sometimes at dawn, sometimes in the middle of the night. He'd stand there for hours, staring at the waves, imagining her running on the sand, squealing when the water touched her feet. Sometimes he'd speak to her as if she was standing